up, Sakura, we're starting.
I'm coming. Ready to lose?
I always win. Most people think it's Professor Plum, but actually, he's definitely not the only one who should be playing.
Death, are you coming?
No, I don't want to play. I already know how this ends. I've seen enough tragedies in my line of work. I don't need to see this again, but I'll watch.
Suit yourself. Anyways, how does this game work?
Clue is a mystery game, and we are the detectives. It's our job to determine who is responsible for the murder of the Vandenberg family.
It seemed to be an ordinary night, and the Vandenberg family was hosting a party.
The party was certainly special, but not in the way they intended.
The Vandenberg family was viciously murdered, and we are trying to figure out how, where, and who is guilty.
Who are the suspects?
There are 6 suspects: Colonel Mustard, Miss Scarlet, Professor Plum, Mrs. Peacock, Mr. Green, and Mrs. White.
What is the weaponry?
It is a revolver, a lead pipe, a knife, a rope, a bomb, and a tank.
And what are the locations?
In the kitchen, the dining room, the lounge, study, library, conservatory.
And
No more questions. Let's start. Rudy, we'll start with you.
I think it was Professor Plum in the conservatory with the lead pipe.
Rudy, you always think it's him. People always say that he's the only one who's kept his promises, all his promises to the family, but I don't buy that for 1 second.
Professor Plum was the wisest, noblest, and strongest man at the party.
I don't believe that. Although Mr. Green was given the rope, it was Plum's idea, making him guilty. Or maybe Plum gave Colonel Mustard the orders to shoot the Vandenberg family.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Plum who killed the family with the lead pipe in the conservatory.
But how does the lead pipe come into play?
I'm getting there. Professor Plum was rarely known to touch a single weapon, but in this case he had no choice. He knew that his weaponry had to be an ordinary object in the house, so the crime couldn't have been pinned on him.
A lead pipe is not an ordinary house object, Rudy.
It is if you're someone who is intelligent like Plum. On the night of the party, the Vandenberg family must have requested his assistance in fixing up some sort of furniture in the conservatory. He wasn't a mechanic, but he was smart enough to know how to fix something.
I see. Clever. But still a little too far-fetched for me.
Well, it would have to be far-fetched to be a successful murder.
Oh, quiet, Sakura. Moving on.
Okay, so now we have Colonel Mustard here. He supposedly committed the murder in the study with a rifle.
Yes, I believe it was Colonel Mustard.
Why is that?
Well, maybe all the victims of the Vandenberg family were gathered in the study, reading like all good families should. Since no one spent much time in the study, it was the perfect place for Colonel Mustard to shoot the family and hide the evidence. He must have shot them. It all fits perfectly. How could he have not killed the family?
Well,
Do you know what he did with the baby of the family?
What?
In Colonel Mustard's army, the infants were tossed in the air and used as targets for the guns.
That is very inhumane and surreal. I can't believe it. How does God allow for the suffering of this poor innocent family?
See? For all I know, Colonel Mustard could have looked like the typical soldier, a cruel, though not unintelligent face. Either way, he did kill the Vandenberg family with his rifle in the study.
Papa, this is where you have it wrong.
What are you talking about?
Colonel Mustard may have done the dirty work, but he was just carrying out the orders of Professor Plum. His job was simply to complete the tasks that he was assigned without question. Professor Plum had the so-called final solution that Colonel Mustard just had to carry out.
However, when it came down to it, one of them called the shots.
Yes, but the other did what he was told.
I think the real question is, what if the other is a lot more than one? There was a whole army that Colonel Mustard led, and together they were responsible. Wait, maybe Mr. Green is responsible for the murder of the family. He used the rope in the library.
How did he get the rope?
Professor Plum gave him the rope, of course. Plum instructed Green to use the rope to tie together supporters to rise against the Vandenberg family. In the library, Mr. Green gave a speech to the supporters regarding the family.
What did he say in the speech?
Mr. Green mainly talked about Max Vandenberg and his desire to be at the top of the social class. He said that as we speak, he is plotting his way into your neighborhood. He's moving in next door. He's infesting you with his family, and he's about to take you over. He will soon own you.
What did his family ever do? This doesn't add up. He must be using them as scapegoats because they are innocent.
Mr. Green used his smooth talking to convince the supporters that the Vandenbergs are terrible party throwers and will be considered the wealthiest, most respectable family in town unless they are stopped.
Exactly. Mr. Green believes that he is using the power of words for good, but in fact, he is using them for evil. He used the family as a scapegoat for Plum's problems.
Wait a minute, Mr. Green is just like Colonel Mustard. He was not thinking for himself and was just completing the tasks he was given.
That does not condone Mr. Green's actions, however. He is responsible for the murder of the Vandenberg family because after he tied his supporters together, he had a large enough army to successfully commit the crime, and since they already had the rope, it was the most convenient weapon.
Enough. What about Mrs. White? She was the maid who stabbed the family in the back.
I think it was Mrs. White in the kitchen with the knife. She's the maid and she's in the house all the time and sees everything that goes on. It's perfect. When Mrs. White lost her original job due to the recent economic struggles, she became a maid in the Vandenbergs' home. However, she became envious of the family and their wealth. She had the motivation. All she needed was to wait for the perfect time to kill them, a time when it could have been anybody in the house.
No. That's not at all what happened.
Are you sure? She was against them the whole time, especially the Vandenberg children. She was ready to turn them in and get them in trouble as soon as she could. It makes sense. She stabbed them in the back.
No, it wasn't with the knife.
Wasn't she seen near the crime?
Of course she was seen near the crime. She knew what was going on. However, it wasn't her who did the murder, and she did not ever see it with her own eyes.
Are you sure?
Positive. If you want to blame her for the murder, it wasn't her actions that did the damage, but her inaction. Overall, she wasn't a bad person, she was just living her life. But when she saw what was going on, she still didn't do anything. Therefore, she is not the murderer, but is responsible for the deaths of the Vandenberg family.
Maybe it could have been Miss Scarlet in the conservatory.
What makes you so sure?
Well, during the party, the family was in the conservatory last minute practicing some music pieces to perform later on at the party. At the time, she knew what situation the Vandenberg family was in and how dangerous it was.
What does that mean? She's too full of herself to actually get involved. I doubt it was her.
Exactly. She knew what was going on, and she just chose not to get involved. She let the Vandenberg family die without saying a word.
What weapon did she use?
She didn't necessarily use a weapon either. She had the weapons necessary, like a bomb, to put an end to Professor Plum's plot against the Vandenbergs.
She had the potential to help save the Vandenbergs. However, she just stayed silent. Staying silent is just as much a crime as committing actions.
Well,
Miss Scarlet chose to stand by, and that is why she is guilty. She chose to stay out of it and just watch the whole situation play out. Miss Scarlet is guilty because of her inaction. She could have dropped the bomb on Plum's plan and keep the Vandenberg family alive, but she kept to herself.
Well, Miss Scarlet may have been a so-called standover man, but we can't forget about Mrs. Peacock. She could have murdered the family in the dining room with the tank.
that's a big accusation to make, Liesel.
But I may be right. You see, Mrs. Peacock was fearful that if she tried to help the family, that she too would be victimized.
But really, a tank?
Yes, similar to Miss Scarlet, Mrs. Peacock also had the resources to protect the Vandenberg family. So, when she saw Colonel Mustard in the dining room plotting his scheme, she remained inactive because she did not want to become a scapegoat.
Liesel is right. Silence is just as much of a crime as taking physical action.
Alright, we made our accusations. It's time to see once and for all who is responsible for the murder of the Vandenberg family. Any last comments?
Just that I am right and you are wrong and you owe me a kiss when I win.
Not happening, not before, not now, not ever.
Come on, Liesel. Just open up the file already. I'm dying to know.
Okay, I'm going. The person responsible for the murder of the Vandenberg family is...
What is it? What's wrong?
They're all in here.
All of them?
But that's impossible. That's not even how the game is supposed to work.
See for yourself.
What does this even mean?
Maybe it's showing that everyone is responsible?
Everyone.
Well, maybe the murder of the family wasn't caused solely by one person in one room with one weapon. Maybe each person contributed in one way or another to their death. Sometimes in life, it isn't just one person who should be blamed.
But this is just a game.
Listen, Sakura, Pop has a point here. Professor Plum may have seemed to be the head of the operation, but everyone else followed his orders or didn't do anything to stop him.
But Colonel Mustard seemed to have fired all the guns. Doesn't that mean that he is responsible for the actual crime?
That still doesn't mean he's the only one responsible. Miss Scarlet, Mrs. White, and Mrs. Peacock, although technically innocent, had the resources and capabilities of stopping everyone from contributing to the murder, but they didn't say anything at all.
Sometimes silence is the greatest crime.
Exactly. And sometimes, speaking out is a crime too. Mr. Green tried to speak out for what everyone else thought was the greater good, but really he was twisting words and making the Vandenbergs seem like people that actually deserved to be killed.
Now do you understand why I didn't want to play the game? I've witnessed many murders take place and have had to pick up millions of souls. I'm tired of watching people try to put the blame on someone else because there are many people to blame.
Well said.
I suppose you're right, but that means we all lose.
Well, that just won't do.
Is anyone in the mood for a good game of sorry?
You're gonna be sorry when I win.
It's on.